Got you.
DNVR Draft Pod. That's right. For the first time, I get to do that intro in the Bo Nix era. It's Bo Nix's world. We are just living in it. Full Bo Nix show. Bo Nix apologist. Bo Nix. Gosh, if there are apologists, what's the opposite? Critics abound. What a show we have here. As always, brought to you by Raising Cane's, like all of the DNVR Broncos. Draft talk all off season presented by Raising Cane's. Get in on some delicious made to order tender chicken fingers from Raising Cane's now, and Breckenridge Distillery. Breck Distillery award-winning spirits available to you in 50 states. Go to BreckenridgeDistillery.com for home delivery of that good stuff. Operas anywhere. I'm here with my guys, Hankster, Jakester, and Justin. He does it. J-Mike.
Justin.
That's the name.
J-Mikester.
J-Mikester. That's the nickname. J-Mike. I forgot because you don't have a stir. You don't have that in your bag.
Stir it up over here, though.
The service we provide as a draft podcast has never been more important than it is right now.
Wow.
Because everyone else just doing draft grades, and they're going to give the Broncos at best a C. At worst, worse than a C.
I gave them an A.
Yeah, no, I know. That's great. Oh, that's really super. This is the Bo Nix episode, our post-draft coverage. I'm really excited for what we're going to get into. A little more in-depth stuff on the rest of the class coming up, on the AFC West, on the undrafted free agents, which I'm really excited about.
Yes.
Fun class the Broncos brought in.
Yes.
All sorts of kind of greater team building stuff I want to get into with you guys. So I'm really excited about the offseason, and I think we'll dedicate a few more weeks to previewing the upcoming season and the stars. But today, God damn it, I wish we would have done this in years past. This episode is all about the Broncos. Number 1 pick, 12th overall. You might have heard Bo Nix. What's his middle name, Hank?
Richard.
Oh, man.
Is it
Bo
really?
Richard
No,
Nix.
that's mine.
So I cannot wait to dig into really the profile as a prospect. What are the things that have so many of the big national analysts skeptical of Bo Nix, including a couple of our guys? And what are the fine points that maybe really lie in beauty as the eye of the beholder? Before that,
One of those fine points. His middle name is Chapman.
Bo Chapman Nix?
Yeah.
Whoa! There's a lot to unpack on that one. But first, Jake, overall thoughts on this Broncos class in 90 seconds, since you didn't get to recap it yet with us. And you'll have a chance soon enough.
I love that they added Franklin and Nix together. I think that gives a young quarterback a much better opportunity of having success. I think especially with the limited practice and just less reps than teams have ever gotten, having somebody that you can hit the ball running with is going to be huge. They filled a lot of holes. I mean, Jonah Ellis is a guy I've been really high on for a long time. I think that's a steal. So I think they did a nice job adding some value picks at positions that, frankly, they needed to upgrade in talent.
Yeah, same. I like the draft class overall. Going into before the draft when we talked about Bo Nix, one of the criticisms I have was, well, when he was in trouble, he just throw it up deep to Troy Franklin. So you just go and get the guy and better your team in that way. We needed a wide receiver. You have that chemistry already built, so I love that pick. I absolutely love the Audric Estime pick.
Yeah, that got you hyped.
In my opinion, he was one of the better, if not the best, running back in college football at times last year.
Just 20 years old.
He is extremely Tough to tackle and extremely athletic for his size. Jonah Ellis was probably one of, if not Utah's best defenders last year. I didn't get to see him in person for the Colorado game, that last game of the year. He was hurt then. I think that's one of 2 games he missed last year.
Three. And still one of 2 Power 5 players with at least 12 sacks.
So, yeah, great production. Chris Abrams-Drain was a guy who was, I think, pretty highly touted, kind of fell in the process.
He was.
So I love that pick. Devon Bailey, kind of an older guy. Whatever, 7th round. I like the class.
Yeah, this class got me really excited. It gets me excited when we have a class where, like, Bo all the way through the Abrams drain pick is guys we talked about on this pod throughout the year. Estime we talked about in depth. Troy Franklin, we did a whole episode where he was a potential like dark horse for the Broncos in round 1 as in after the top 3 wide receivers. So I'm excited. I'm excited to get all in it. It's been a minute since I was this happy to dig into the film and watch college football and just think of all the possibilities that could be for Broncos football. So that alone feels like a big win. But where I want to start with the Bo Nix conversation is with this little thought experiment, which is if Bo Nix were just 22 and had played his freshman year at Auburn, as is, 9-win team, they beat Justin Herbert in the bowl game in Oregon, they beat Bama in the Iron Bowl. His sophomore and junior year do not exist. Sophomore and junior year are his final 2 years at Oregon. How does that change how he'd be perceived as a prospect and maybe the outlook of him being picked 12th overall?
Well, I mean, if he's 2 years younger, I think you probably get some of the late jump that J.J. McCarthy got, where you really talk yourself into, I mean, this guy's so young and he's still got so much room to grow. And I know we haven't necessarily seen all of these, pro throws consistently, somewhat because of the system that he's playing in. You could really talk yourself into it. I don't think there's quite as much pushback on some of that stuff. I mean, he grew a lot. The counter is, though, like, I don't know, like you have to factor all, like he was so drastically different those 2 years. Like I got really excited watching these last 2 years of Oregon.
Yeah.
Because I was finally able to like let go of some of my predetermined just opinions of him from having watched him at Oregon. Like, I guess what I'm just trying to say is like, he needed, just move on.
The point of this exercise, I think, is to dig in on 3 factors. A, how much does age play into this? And right, the conversation that surrounds his overall upside, which like his Bo Nix's ceiling has been a big part of our conversation.
Yes.
And where he kind of falls in this quarterback class relative to others. B, we've talked a lot about the offense and the system he comes from. I think when you do this exercise, you find that the system matters way less, right? It only matters in the context of he looks so bad at Auburn that are we willing to concede he completely turned the page as a player when it's hard to detach how much that system and obviously the overall setting that playing football at Oregon is different than playing football at Auburn changes things.
Exactly. Because, I mean, like you take out those other 2 years and he's a 70% career passer, And I think there's so much of it that when you're seeing 2 good years and
those are the 2 years he was below 60%, right?
Yeah, and his freshman year too. His freshman year too, he was at 57%, which is not great. But I do think that when you take out those last 2 years at Auburn, it just skews how much good there is to bad, and I think it just makes an arc that's easier to comprehend.
Yeah.
When you say like, oh, he found a way to win. He wasn't all that good though, but then by year 2. He was very sharp, completing 72% of his passes. And look at the 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Then you look at that year 2 to year 3 jump and say, not just 29-7, now it's 45-3. He's a 77% pass. And this like progression that you've seen is just so much more exciting versus he wasn't that good but found a way to get wins. He continued to not be that good. He continued to be about the same player. And we were same player. Before you finally take that leap, I think it's a lot easier to just say, hey, that was a little blip on the radar there at the beginning. Now look at what he's become and the way that he's found a role, found a way to be very successful himself, not just as a team in this different offense.
Do you think this, if this were the case, Jake, do you think this would change where we would view him in this draft class?
Absolutely. Like, no
That's
question.
like Justin
Yeah.
was saying. He's probably way closer to the J.J. McCarthy.
Definitely.
That's what I was trying. You guys much more eloquent, and I appreciate because I was drowning, and you pulled it together. I was like, yes, thank you.
Well,
that was
and I-
what I was trying to say.
Yes.
But
I almost wonder, Justin, like 3 years into this, if that was his profile, is he all that different from Bryce Young? A guy who, like, look, he was... That's a unique offense with a lot of talent around it. Maybe it's not the greatest natural tools, and we could question what the ultimate ceiling is. But when we've seen such success in a high-profile setting, we're willing to allow for, maybe he's not an elite athlete. Maybe there's not an elite arm. Maybe there's not, elite size.
You can't argue with the results, though.
But you can't argue with the results. And yet with Bo Nix, we're much more willing to argue with the
There's
results.
a lot of results
Well-
you could argue, yeah.
Well, I mean, he was a 5-star coming out of high school. He's the number
No
one
doubt.
dual threat quarterback.
no doubt.
Like, and I'm pretty sure Bryce was the same dual threat, right? He wasn't pocket.
I think he was dual threat. I can't remember.
So
Yeah, you
For
would
sure.
think. You would think.
So
You would think.
and look, Auburn was just a shit show towards the end there. They underwent a coaching
Undeniably.
change. They've had to rebuild the trenches. They can't find a quarterback basically since Bo Nix even left.
like, who's the last Auburn receiver you can even name?
Well,
Off it.
Seth,
Seth
Williams.
Williams. Yeah.
Go Broncos.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Seventh round pick.
Coates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I
There
meant
was-
that was like a dude.
Exactly.
Right,
You know,
right.
like,
yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
did Cam even have dudes?
He had
Like,
that
it's
tight
been
end.
a minute,
No.
right?
It's been a while.
It's been a minute.
Stidham was thrown to a guy, I thought too.
I thought there was one guy in there too, but I
Yeah.
can't remember who he is, so he can't be that much of a guy.
right.
Yeah, I remember Sammy Coates for some reason. Is that an actual name?
Yes.
Sounds like
he
some-
played for the Steelers.
Yeah.
Sounds like a dude from the AFL. That sounds like a real old timey. And there's Sammy Coates.
jet sweep.
Yeah, exactly.
Anthony Schwartz.
That's who it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, but I think at college he never went over like 600 receiving yards. So we like the guy because he
chicken
ran
or
a
egg,
4.2, but
Playing with Bo Nix.
Um,
3 years
No,
with
that's
Bo Nix.
really tough setting. Really tough setting. And I do wonder in this NIL and transfer era how much we, the college guys, are struggling with some prospect fatigue. Because we've been talking about this man for 5 years.
Literally.
Yes.
Yeah.
The entire time that I have been on the draft pod, we have had Bo Nix to talk about as a prospect.
That's right.
A half a decade.
And think about, he's going to be one of the second to last guy we can say he's one of those guys who beat a Saban Bama team.
Right.
And that was like the holy grail for
Yeah,
quarterback prospect.
definitely.
Deshaun Watson, Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton,
Yep.
Joe Burrow.
Beat Bama.
That was like your validation moment
Yes.
in
Yep.
the SEC. It
Yes.
was like, were you good enough to elevate
Yeah.
your team? And now Georgia has kind of become that.
But Carson Beck, he won't have that ever.
No.
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels, he doesn't have that to his record. There is one guy that was drafted this year who would.
So, whoa.
J.J. McCarthy in the net.
There
Oh,
you go.
yes.
J.J.
yes.
McCarthy.
Rose Bowl.
And next year would we have one? No. Oh, Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers
Yeah,
will
he
be
did
next
it.
year.
He did it. Yeah.
So he's like the final. He's one of the last of the Mohicans in a sense. And
Yep.
Wow.
if I
Yes.
can say that, I don't
think
know.
you
That's
can.
an old timey reference. That's a dumb movie.
If you ask, if it gets people thinking, though.
So, anyways, that's where I wanted
Darius
to go
Slayton.
because I think it's easy.
That's a
wide
good
receiver.
callback.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
It's easy to dig into the scouting report and be like, hey, this is why I wasn't seen. But then you tweak a little bit about the profile. All of a sudden, it's less about the scouting report.
Right.
And it's a lot. So there's kind of some added context. I want to dig into the biggest trait that I think is holding Nix back.
Yep.
And that really comes down to the deep ball. Before we do that, I do want to give a shout out to Raising Cane's. Oh man, Raising Cane's. Their stuff
man.
is so
Goats.
delicious. Fire fried chicken. We got the hookup after the event. We've been going to get some free stuff. Tasty, tender, made to order Cane's. They love them. some Texas toast over there.
It's so good, man. I just it's you probably like
It's real
you
buttery.
might be thinking to yourself, do I really need this I got the chicken fingers, I got the French fries. Is it
Right.
overkill? No,
Right.
it's
Do
not.
I need
It's
Texas
perfection.
toast?
It's
You
a
do.
little bit of a palate
Great call.
cleanse.
Great
You
call.
just you need a little bit of a pace change up in there. I mean,
true.
that's what I'm about. I throw the coleslaw out, get extra Texas toast, maybe make a little bit of a sandwich.
And
Shout
then you
out
got
to
the
Raising
cane
Cane's.
sauce too, and the crispy crinkle cut fries. Oh, it's so good. For cook to order, hand battered chicken fingers. Race into Raising Cane's. Turbocharge your chicken fingers and get them even faster by ordering online at raisingcanes.com or through their mobile app. Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers. One love.
Also, check out Breck Brew's new West Coast style IPA, Ridge Runner. This double dry hopped brew is inspired by untamed beauty of Colorado trails. Hopback infused with whole cone hops and a double dose of citrululipin powder creates more of the bright citrus and pine. Had to ask the girlfriend how to pronounce that one. This is the new beer that Breck is stoked about. I can't wait to try it. They've got all kinds of good stuff. Make sure you check out the Good Company hard seltzers. They've got some new flavors this summer. And go hit up the Breck Farmhouse. We had a great time there last Thursday. Really great host for our NFL draft coverage. It was a blast. Check out that Breck beer locator at breckbrew.com to find a brew near you.
Nicely done. So yeah, if you've read Henry's film room on Bo Nix, if you've heard some of the conversations we've had throughout the year, deep ball's a big one. Raw arm strength is a big part of assessing Bo Nix's overall ceiling as a quarterback prospect. And I think specifically what we're talking about is not so much raw arm strength. We're like, watch him at the Senior Bowl where they had, he bombs it like 60 yards, no problem.
Arm strength isn't a problem.
Strength is
it
not a
isn't
problem.
crazy arm strength like a Josh Allen where you say
That's
like,
right. That's
oh
right.
boy, like
Yep.
this opens doors.
Yep. And that's where you go back to the Auburn stuff, and it's crazy. But you'll be like, oh no, he's got plenty of arm strength.
Yeah.
The zip's there. He can throw it off his back leg, falling back.
a 5-star recruit, dude.
He's a 5-star
Exactly.
recruit.
He's a 5-star recruit.
And when I see him throw on the run, I really like how his deep ball looks. So what we're really digging into is deep ball accuracy from within the pocket. And that's where I do think there is some stuff to be desired. But again, it is less related to raw arm strength. And I think it's just the next level of his accuracy that he needs to tap into. Because obviously the last 2 years at Oregon, he was extremely accurate.
And that's another one where if you go back to the thought experiment and say, hey, we saw what we saw year one at Auburn, throw out the next 2 years, and he's this 22-year-old coming out,
Exactly.
and you see, well, he was able to grow inside this offense and do that over 2 years. Very successful as an athlete, as a quarterback. Is the next step just getting that deep ball more consistent? Because you've seen him.
Is that what you think, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of goes back to what I said, where I think it feels more like JJ, and some of that is just because he's not a 24-year-old at this point. And I
Exactly.
think you're trying to talk yourself into, like, is he really capable of kind of taking it up a level there? And I'll be honest, man, like I was pretty skeptical throughout the draft process. I wasn't stoked on draft night. I wasn't upset as Jake, but I wasn't jumping with joy, looking on Nike.com for the new jersey or anything like that.
Shout out.
I don't have as many concerns about the deep ball stuff as I did, like watching him.
Yeah, right.
And there are actually some times where I felt like some of his better throws, like they didn't end up being completions, so you weren't
Yes.
focusing on them.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
there
you
were
won't see him
times
in
where
the highlight.
yeah,
but it's
there were times where I thought he showed really good, a really good sense of timing and when to let it rip downfield and where to place the ball. And, it's right there for the
Yes.
receiver to, run underneath it. I think if you put him in a situation where he just does it a little bit more consistently, you take away some of those quick screens. And even that, like, for as much heat as I was giving him for like Oregon system being all spoon fed, there's more progression stuff too. And like he's
agree.
good at avoiding, just putting the ball in bad spots. Like he's good
Right.
yes, I am just going to take this underneath throw, but he's doing it because it's like I'm looking at this safety lurking over here, and I just think there's a little bit more meat on those bones than I was giving him credit for.
And I think
which was my exact takeaway when I watched more tape as well.
I totally
I'm
agree.
glad you said that, Justin.
And I think where you really see it is the kind of like the token look off the safety.
Yes,
where you
his eyes are great.
Exactly.
Dude.
Where you have like they love that slot fade with the little out in behind it, just so like clear space. And he'll run that play, but he'll run that play by starting off looking to the other side of the field to get the safety over there. Because it's not, I need to make this read and give him the ball. It's, I know what's going to happen here. So I might as well just look off the safety because I don't even need to look over here. It's almost like the next level to being able to run that little passing concept is don't even look off the safety, and then there might be room to run after. It's almost like Joker type stuff, you know, where it's not like, hey, I can see this coming. It's like, I don't even need to look at this point.
Well, I think that goes into a lot of what, we've heard about him and why he's felt like a Sean Payton type is he's smart. Like he clearly has a firm understanding of what he is trying to accomplish. Where can I put the ball that's going to put us in a position to have success? Risk assessment. Like I feel like he did a pretty good job of not putting the ball in harm's way. Honestly, maybe a couple of times I was like, maybe let that one rip. Maybe let that one rip. And maybe you finish the year with 6 or 7 interceptions, but for as good as his numbers were, again, like there were almost a couple of times where I was like, I see why you held on to it there. I see what you were looking at. You're seeing if that linebacker is going to drop back, but put that one in. Like, sometimes the coaches, they'll tell that to you even. Like, I'd want a guy that doesn't turn the ball over a ton, but I don't want a guy that never turns it over either.
Yep. No, and he was really good at mastering that fine balance between taking your shots and living to survive another day.
And especially in that second year, like he just really showed a high level of control with that offense. And like, I know again, some of it really is just like, all right, this quick slant is going to be there, but like there's a method to the madness and you're trying to set it up.
Yep.
Watching that USC game, like it's like the second throw of the game. He gets man coverage, checks to a fucking bomb, drops it downfield. Like not a lot. You don't see a ton of that at the collegiate level.
It's true.
So, okay. Especially the night of the draft. Lot of emotions.
Yeah.
I did my homework though.
Good.
I went in, especially because, we already kind of talked about his age. I guess I should have brought this up earlier, but with this, I found some interesting stuff. So Jim Nagy, I don't know what he is.
Senior Bowl director?
Director, president, whatever it is.
Yeah. Senior Bowl's everything.
Yeah. He runs the show though.
He does.
He had this tweet
Draft starts in Mobile.
Sure does.
on April 11th about what the Senior Bowl staff has been doing with scouting.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is different. I'll just read you the first part of the tweet here. It says, we've been evaluating 2025 prospects since January, and it's crazy how drastically the extra COVID year and NIL have impacted draft eligible numbers. So far, we've been grading 25 plus prospects at most Power 4 schools. By comparison, pre-COVID, NFL scouts would typically write up 15 to 18 guys at NFL pipeline programs like Alabama, 8 to 12 at most P5, rarely more than 3 to 5 at G5 schools. But moving forward in the 2025 draft, this is just like their top 10. They've got 32 guys at Louisville, 31 at Rutgers, 29 at Oregon. I'm not going to go down the whole list. Colorado makes it with 23. The point is, with NIL and COVID especially, guys have just stayed in college longer now. They can make more money. You don't have to take the risk of going to the NFL to try and get that contract right away.
Right.
So Bo Nix took advantage of that stuff. He used the COVID year to his advantage. He got this extra year at Oregon, which is why he got boosted up into the first round and was taken 12th overall. So it reminds me of guys like Brock Purdy and Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett especially because he had a massive senior year and kind of had a similar progression. I'm not comparing them as NFL quarterbacks, but as prospects. And same with Brock Purdy. I mean, he played 4 years, played through COVID, probably could have left, after his, I think, his third year or fourth year. I think he had 5.
Yep.
But he didn't. He decided to stay in school. And look at what Brock Purdy's been able to do.
Yeah.
And Bo Nix reminds me a lot more of Brock Purdy than he does Kenny Pickett. He's a good athlete. He's going to
He
make
reminds me so. I think I said this at some point, and it's a comp I've made for JJ too. Purdy feels a lot like if you run a Shanahan offense and you've seen Purdy's success, you'd think like, man, Bo Nix could do a lot worse.
Yep.
And we clowned on Brock Purdy on this show like we did on Bo Nix.
Oh, when I'm thinking college football, like prospect fatigue, Brock Purdy's the first guy that jumps out at me.
So
We didn't even take him seriously by the end of it. We were like so over him.
Yeah.
So
there he is still.
It's just too much of a sample size. At some point, it was
we were
almost like too
exactly
much data.
exactly.
It's like I'm really
exhausted.
going to look at what I just saw and forget everything else that I saw. Like, you're not going to fool me with this.
But it is funny though, like for as much as we fixate on traits and all this, and there's a reason. I'm not saying that there's not value. There's a ton of reason for it. There's also just like a ton of value in playing a lot of football.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think we have underlooked that, or at least some of these teams have in recent years, because you talk yourself into, what's the kid out of North, Trey Lance,
Right.
where it's like, okay, but like the dude's played less than 12 football games in his entire collegiate career. There is value in just playing a lot of football. And I think it's,
That's why the Parcells rules are what they are.
well, and I think it's why we're seeing some of these guys have a chance to come out and have a little bit more early success than some of these dudes who have, all the physical attributes in the world, but maybe have only played a year of football. Like you just need that time to grow and to fail and to do it, frankly, on a college level stage. I think that helps. Like how many of these quarterbacks do we give up on after 2 or 3 years in the NFL? And it's like,
exactly
okay,
right.
but like, what if they were just allowed to fail at Iowa State where people aren't watching?
Right. Yeah. Definitely.
100%. And I think it'll be really interesting, these couple classes. And I mean, the other point to Jake's thing is the guys Bo's playing against are also more experienced, have also gotten more reps, and, might be a little more fine-tuned in the IQ department than the kind of guys we were seeing Johnny Manziel throw against when there was.
Yes,
There was just a lot of
definitely.
really refined prospects, and I think it's why there was so much depth in those first couple of rounds. Like maybe you don't have the generational. I mean, Caleb Williams obviously has that potential, but like maybe you don't have like 4 or 5 guys in the first round that you look at as like Hall of Famers. But I think between those first 3 rounds, especially the amount of starters and consistent players, when we look back at this class 5 years from now, a lot of really good players.
But the safeties can't be an example. Nobody you really get excited about necessarily. No first round picks. But there were like a solid handful of guys who you look at and say like, yeah, I know what you do in the NFL. Like you're an NFL player.
100%.
Yeah.
A lot of those most highly drafted safeties this year also played in the Pac-12. Bo Nix
True.
played against Kalen Bullock, the second
Cole
safety
Bishop,
draft.
Cole Bishop, yeah.
Cole Bishop, Sione Vaki.
Yeah. A running back.
Yeah, also a running. I cannot wait to get
Yeah.
into him.
Got drafted as a running back.
I know.
Crazy.
His cow tape at running back is very fun.
Huh. Let's
yeah,
go back.
yeah. And of course, we get to watch a lot of Utah because between playing against Bo, Jonah Ellis, and anything else going on.
Might be getting a little inside scoop on that at some point too. There's a tweet. There's a tease for everybody.
There you go. That is a good tease. Here's another good tease for you. Bet365, where I won plus 4,000 on Michael Penix Jr. to be the 8th overall pick, where we also gave you a DNVR custom bet of Bo Nix to be the Broncos' first pick. That was boosted to plus 120. That hit. All you have to do is sign up using our code DNVR365. And right now, not just the great offers, $10 deposit, $5 bet. As soon as that's settled, you'll get $150 in bonus bets. Right now at DNVR, check out for more details at ddnvr.com/bet365. You can enter to win prizes when you email us a screenshot of having used our code to sign up at promo@ddnvr.com. You are eligible to win all sorts of great DNVR swag, merch. And if you participate with us, not just this week, but next week and the week after, ride with us on some bets on Bet365, you will be eligible to win some big prizes from us that only we can offer you. I'm really excited about that. Must be 21 plus, physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If someone you know has a gambling problem, wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
Also, shout out to Breckenridge Bourbon Whiskey, the official bourbon of the Denver Broncos. Look for their 2024 bourbon blends to hit the shelves this August. The Breckenridge Distillery is the world's highest distillery. Founded in 2008, they are widely known for their blended bourbon whiskey, a high rye mash American-style whiskey. Our Breckenridge bourbon is one of the most highly awarded craft bourbons in the U.S. It's really affordable, too, which is nice. You don't have to break the bank to get yourself a nice drink. I'm actually going to pick up a bottle this August before I go on a family vacation. So shout out to Breck Distillery. Breckenridge Distillery products available in all 50 states. Shop your local retailer or visit Breckenridge Distillery for their home delivery of award-winning Breckenridge spirits. Apres anywhere? Apres anywhere?
He's been critiqued on that very many times.
Yes, I have been, yeah.
Alyssa would know from the sounds. Alyssa, can you bring up that super chat? Because that's exactly where I wanted to go to kind of wrap a bow on some of this stuff.
Nice.
Hojak Borsman says...
Oh, I'm glad he brought
in
this
the
up.
Toyota
A
chat.
bow.
Huh?
A bow. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, you even let that go by you?
I did. That was no pun intended for realsies.
yeah.
He said, watch Nick's feet in the pocket. Dude doesn't hitch into throws often. He's oddly flat-footed. That's exactly what I'm seeing. Could explain a lot of the in-the-pocket arm strength stuff. And that is a huge reason why I think he's able to generate more velocity and arm strength when he's on the move than when he's on the pocket. You know, modern quarterbacks, the off-platform stuff, it's a blessing and it's a curse. And I see it with Bo Nix, where he's able to make some incredible throws off-platform, but then there's also throws where he's drifting back, or he's not getting under his feet, or he's not, getting that hitch and getting into that throw to really bomb it deep. And I think that could go a long way. If myself and Hojak Borsman are seeing this, well, you bet
Davis
your
Webb
ass
probably
that
sees
Sean
it.
Payton's also seeing this. So.
There's a really good breakdown that kind of dives into some of this stuff. I think it was Kurt Warner's that mentions that. I don't. At this point, I've watched Sims and Warner and
it's Kurt
Chase
Warner and all the backup
Daniel and every
quarterbacks.
former NFL quarterback
it.
and they're all great. And they all pointed out some things I didn't see initially. But that was the one thing that stood out to me, especially kind of just with like a baseball background. Watching him on some of those intermediate throws, he can at times kind of lean. He's kind of throwing off of that back foot, and he's not really driving through. That's tends to be when he has accuracy issues low. I think you can clean that kind of stuff up, though. I'm with you. Like I think the curse of having these quarterbacks run around so much is that at times their mechanics aren't quite as consistent and sharp, just because you're not in rhythm. It's not every play is not like a 3 or a 5 step drop. You can get a little sloppy at times, and I think with the right coaching, you can eliminate a lot of that stuff. And if you can, I think that takes away a lot of the alleged, arm strength concerns and all that. Like, just clean up the footwork a little bit, drive through it a little bit. You got to be like the baseball coach being too active, really come through those throws. But if he does that, I mean, that's going to eliminate a lot of the stuff that I really was kind of nitpicking him for.
100%. And then there are other ways to evaluate arm strength. And that's the other thing. I think we get so caught up in just the deep ball and the deep ball accuracy specifically on just go balls, 9 rounds.
Yeah.
Like just leading the guy who has a step on his cornerback. And like at the NFL level, those are kind of some of the most basic throws you're going to make. Do you have zip and tight windows? A great way to evaluate arm strength. Can you get it where you need to off platform? And I think the more I watched Bo Nix, the more I felt really good about that.
Maybe only Caleb Williams is better
Off platform?
I mean, yeah, Caleb's an
Consistently.
alien.
Consistently.
I know, but is it fair to say that Bo's number 2?
I think
JJ
JJ
has
has
some-
higher flashes,
Yeah,
but they're fewer.
they are.
When JJ does it, it's
I mean,
more
they throw
like,
they
"Whoa,
throw the ball.
Where'd that
Yeah.
come from?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, the Rose Bowl throw where Dallas Turner pops him when
Yeah,
he's rolling to
yeah.
his left.
No, he's got a few of
That's
those.
one of the best throws of the class.
He's got a few of those. But, Justin's point is, I think you're right there.
Yeah.
If he's not second in the class, he's probably third. Anticipation, throwing with anticipation and timing, where he probably leads the class.
Yep.
Avoiding interceptions. There are some interceptions I do see from Bo on tape. I don't know if you guys remember the Utah game, 2022. Basically, Oregon and Utah are playing for who will play against USC in the Pac-12 championship.
Right.
Comes down to the final drive of the game. Oregon's driving. Bo's got a wide receiver far sideline, so away from his arm side. Throws the out route. Cam Phillips picks him off. Game over. NFL corner. We were very high on him.
Then went on the draft pod and we're like, that's the bonus. You know, like even as much progress as he made, he's still, you know, at the end of the day.
I think that's important though, because I think
It's very important.
You group Oregon into one category and Auburn into one category, but really year 1 at Oregon and year 2 at Oregon, you saw big growth between them. I
Agreed
think
completely.
and so you can't just look at Oregon as a whole and say, look at what he did in this offense. It was a growth within the offense to get to the point that he's at now, which I'm not sure if you see that as a positive or a negative.
Yeah.
But it really, to me, only is one season in his entire college career where you say this was an elite season.
Yes.
Like this is a season that, again, record setting. Like there's a completion percentage stats, things where he was a master of the offense. You go back to his first year at Oregon, very good performance, but not all that special. And there was a lot more of that kind of stuff. It was this year where he really got rid of all those little mistakes. Because even this year, you look at the interceptions, I mean, 3 of them, one of them is when in the Washington game, where like the receiver and cornerback run out of bounds. And so there's a different receiver who he tries to throw the ball to. Cornerback comes back in bounds and picks it off, which you should know that guy's out there. But it's also just a weird, fluky sort of play. And I don't see that as concerning moving forward. So like, it's such a good year this year,
and you're
but
just
that is another
bomb
step
it down the sidelines and like make a tight window throw. Sometimes those don't work out. Like Josh Allen throws one of those.
But that's the thing is, and I've brought that up. People disagree with my thoughts on Josh Allen. Not that he's never mind. We don't have time for that. Josh Allen. Yeah, but because there are so few of those interceptions. Because there's only 3 all year, it's really easy when he hits a tight window throw to be even more excited by it because you don't see the mistakes that generally come with that. Or at least you see fewer of them compared to a Josh Allen or compared to some of these other guys. When he, in particular, I can think of a couple throws, progressions on the right. He's got a dig on the backside and there's a robber in the middle. And he gets the ball to the dig on the backside. After going through his progressions on the right, gets the ball to the dig on the backside before he hits the robber in the middle of the field. And you're like, oh, did he not see that guy? But it's so easy to say, I think he saw that guy and thinks he can make the throw because if he wasn't seeing that guy, think of all the other guys he's probably not seeing. There'll probably be more than 3 interceptions.
No, that's exactly right. Like, I think we got a little too caught up in the production last year and how offense-based, and we lose sight of, like, you're not going to break records in college football by just being a system quarterback.
Yeah.
There are times where you need to overcome having pressure in your face. No, I mean, we've seen it, right? But these are more than Cole Brennan stats.
Right, exactly. Yes.
And he,
for sure.
Like, he had a top 10 ranked team. And he beat a lot of the opponents, a lot of these guys that got drafted in top 100. He competed
I was
against
just going
them
to
and
give you
came
shit
out a
for
winner.
him and like Case Keenum. So,
no, I mean, that's true. But I think that's where I want to make the distinction, right? I think this is different from, this isn't Luke Falk.
right.
Just in a good Washington State offense, you know. And that interception to Cam Phillips, I also see a lot of throws to the sideline where I feel like, oh man, he gunned it to the sideline, no problem. Like
And
the arm strength is there.
It's those instances where he just doesn't throw off his back foot when he doesn't get a little. It's literally
Steps into it, right?
Yeah, he's fine.
But even then, I think it's some of those feel throws on the sideline where I still
Like layered
am not
throws?
convinced. Yeah, some layer, but also like the hole shots against cover 2. I
Yeah.
wish there was more of that.
Yeah.
I wish I'd seen more of that. And that's not layer throw. That's just like a pound it in there, but know when to pound it in there. Like it's almost like a timing throw in terms of like
see
the
that
feel.
though with the timing
He
and
did have a
anticipation.
seam against USC that's probably like 35-yard throw, and he rips it right over the linebacker underneath the safety.
You
I
see
mean,
it in the
there's
red
not
zone,
a ton
too.
of it.
In the red zone, there's definitely more. But I feel like you see a whole bunch more of the timing throws in terms of, again, like we talk a lot about the clear out in the slot, tight end runs a little out and behind it. Like those progressions on type sorts of things he's really good at. I'm not sure that he's, Michael Penix Jr., for example, those hole shots he's incredible at. He just bang, it's right there every single time, and that's just a different sort of timing than, this guy's going to get cleared out, hit him on his break. It's when is he going to clear here? When do you have the maximum time? And that's where there is some of it. There's room for more, I think.
100%. And I think really what we're coming to is arm strength isn't the question.
Not at all. No, not for me at all.
Yeah.
One of the videos you sent, the underdog one, something that I did it raised my eyebrow was, I think it was like 88% of his throws, no pressure. And that's, I think, where, for me at least at Auburn, where he got in the most trouble was when he was pressured, he was forced to making a decision. And it was in those instances where you would see the worst of Bo Nix. And you just didn't see a lot of that last year. I mean, 88% without pressure. That's an outrageous rate. So
No, it's crazy.
that's not going to happen in the NFL. This offensive line is much better. I think Sean Payton's going to continue to prove and invest in this offensive line. I
also see some of his best throws under pressure,
For sure.
Most exciting throws, for sure, yeah.
But that's just where I have my questions. In the NFL, when everything's a lot more sped up, defenses are more intricate, offenses are more intricate, you have to rely on your teammates to be in the right spot a lot more. And you do face more pressure. I want to see how he performs then. That's when you'll know, I think, how good he's going to be.
I also think maybe not he helps himself, but that offense helps him because so much of it moves quickly. How many times when you go back and watch Jonah Ellis against Bo Nix, do you say, oh, he kind of had him there, but the ball was just out too quick?
No.
And so if that's really how you're going to play is
that a selling point, though?
I think so with Sean Payton.
That's a good question, because I still think you probably are concerned about what he does under pressure, and you probably say we need to put him in situations where he isn't pressured. I think that with any quarterback, you say, let's try to keep him away from pressure. But given that his strengths are running those quick concepts underneath, kind of like a lot of traditional West Coasty type of concepts, I think you say let's do a lot of that stuff, because that's what he's best at anyway. I think his strengths align with his other strengths, and they're easy to build upon, I guess. I'm not sure that his strength is dropping back and running a whole bunch of these intermediate and deep route combinations. I think it is this quick game, and so I think if you're worried about him under pressure, run that stuff anyway, because that's what he's best at in the first place. Third downs, you get into some trouble, but that's ideally you're not getting into third and long in the first place. I think the core concepts are very clear, and I think they're easy to get excited about.
So I think, and that's an important distinction here, is I think so much of the thought process with bringing a guy like Bo Nix in, especially paired with Sean Payton and knowing what he wants this offense to be post Russell Wilson, and just stay on script. They don't necessarily, I don't think, want him to be running around playing backyard football. Yes, there are going to be moments where he's just going to have to scramble and create something. That's going to happen. But if he's doing that every other throw, either the O-line's a disaster and it's probably not going to matter anyways, or this offense isn't functioning the way it's intended. Drew Brees, it was all about timing and its execution and
script and all that stuff. Yeah.
Get the ball right here. It's just staying on track. He can do all that. And I think if you're Sean Payton, and I think there's probably some ego involved too, oh, you guys are all doubting this guy. You don't see what I see. I'll put him in my system and we'll do it. But you don't need him to be Superman. You just need him to stay on script.
But the flip side of that being, do the Broncos need him to be Superman because their receivers are deep, but maybe you don't have the top end talent there? At Oregon, it's really easy to say, hey, let's just go get a 5-yard completion every time, because that doesn't mean we need to make 20 of them to get all the way down the field. It means we need to make about 8 of them before somebody breaks a big one. With the Broncos, can you really go, okay, let's get it to Court, he's got 5 yards. Okay, let's get it to Tim Patrick, he's got 5 yards. Or do you look at that and say, we can get it to Court, and then Court will turn that 5 into 15 or 20 or 25? I think there's a bit more of a ceiling there.
I think we're fixing to find out. But I also do we even know? Because there were so many times with Russ where he just turns around and runs 6 yards backwards, and it's I honestly don't even know what was there at that point.
It might just take more patience in that case to say, hey, this might only be 5 yards every time, so we got to take the 5 yards, and you can't get too greedy. But I do have more concerns about, Like, it's a lot easier at Oregon when you turn, there's a sack, it's 2nd and 17. How many times does he throw the 6-yard, 7-yard throw and it just is a first down? You don't have to worry about the 3rd down, you know?
Right.
It's so much easier to keep calling that short stuff when there is a chance they'll just pop.
I mean,
And
the
it's not
short
Bo's
stuff
fault
is where you're going to survive.
And if the receivers aren't good enough, that's not Bo's fault.
No.
Bo can only do what Bo can do.
No, you
but
can only
if it doesn't
expect
work out,
so much. I mean,
exactly.
like,
And then that goes back to kind of the Brock Purdy thing.
even if he's Mahomes, you can't expect Mahomes to be Superman in an offense like the Broncos. Like,
I mean,
there's so much.
Those receivers were terrible, except Kelsey last year, though. But
Yeah,
you see,
no,
but
and
you
he
see,
did-
how
I mean,
he makes
He's
it
a
work.
unicorn,
He
bro.
didn't-
Exactly.
And he also didn't always look spectacular either.
Not always.
You
No,
know, like-
we were halfway through the season saying they're not.
Yeah. No.
Here's the down year.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's football. It's 22 on 22.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you are going to need your teammates. But I do think I have come around to I'm less worried about the raw tools.
Yep.
And there's some regression that concerns me, and it's less related to the scheme he's come from. It's less related to the raw tools. It's more related to some of the stuff you even saw at the Senior Bowl where he didn't look as accurate and he didn't look as comfortable. And can we expect him to be this decision maker and accurate thrower we were seeing at Oregon? I think that's going to take some time, and how much of that version of himself he can replicate, I think is really going to come down to how successful he can be in the NFL.
And what happens in the first 3 weeks? Because if you go out there and things don't go great in the first 3 weeks, can you still in week 4 show up and be decisive? You know, you make those little reads on that curl flat.
Sure.
It's a great concept. You're going to get somebody open. You've got to get that ball in time. There's no waiting to see what happens. And that's his strength, is that he doesn't wait to see what happens. He knows what's going to happen. Again, if you make a couple of mistakes early, are you still that confident? Are you still that decisive?
Yeah,
if you
no.
keep that confidence.
Avoiding seeing ghosts, avoiding being in a spot where your confidence has been shaken and now you're not making those same decisions. I mean, what I've said about Bo for a while is like he played with supreme confidence and accuracy.
Yes.
Like it all stemmed from that confidence, and then he's looking guys off. He's getting it out on time. He's anticipating throws. You need all of that.
You know what
Yeah.
he feels like, though? Like, if you want to be just in terms of regression or the possibility of old habits coming into play, some of the stuff Jake's talking about at Auburn, where he's kind of running around with this, like a chicken without a head. And in that Iron Bowl win, he actually managed to pull a couple of plays out of his ass, honestly. Also, a lot of times where it was just like, no clue what you're looking at on that one. There's 3 defenders there, not a guy in sight.
Yep.
He's been so strong of a decision maker, especially this year, but really these last 2 years. It kind of feels like the guy you knew in college that like the first couple years just like would get blackout and you would find him passed out in the grass with like, you know, his pants around his ankles and holding the bottle or something. And then a couple years later, that dude, he's got his act together. He's living at home now. He's not around all the bad stuff. He's killing it. But what happens that Saturday night when his boys come to town and they hit the bars? Like, is
Right.
that old demon still in there? Like,
Right.
if shit hits the fan, does he regress to that chaotic, erratic?
That's my concern.
And
I mean, there are times you want that too, but those are
course.
very select
Yes.
times.
Of course, because I mean, he's showing the confidence and ability to make plays on his own, and you're gonna need that in the NFL at quarterback. But
Yeah, to be a top quarterback, especially.
there are times where it's just like, just kill the play, just go down, throw it away. Like,
Right.
we don't need to be Superman here.
Well, that's the thing. Like, as much as we fixate on the big play and the raw traits, so much of being a good quarterback is just living to fight another day.
Yes.
Yep.
Don't be an issue. Don't cause catastrophe.
Absolutely.
Just stay on script. And again, I think like
And
that's
he
probably,
arguably did that better than any
and
quarterback.
I think
in
that's
this
why it
class.
makes so much sense
arguably
that
overdid it.
Sean Payton's into him, especially after what he saw this past season.
There might be a couple times where he's too quick to the check down.
Let's
Agreed.
pull up
Yeah.
some of those tweets here, Alyssa, because the other thing is kind
yes.
of
I sent them
perception.
to you.
We went through this with wide receivers too, where some of the drop rates were different from what we then saw with the advanced stats. On target percentage, on sideline throws with 10 plus air yards, Bo Nix led the class with 60%, Jaden Daniels 59%, Penix 56, Caleb 55, Drake May 52, McCarthy 51. Only guy in the last 2 years to be higher is Stroud, which the tweet with the goat emoji, I assume, means Stroud was the best they've ever charted in such a metric. Let's go to that next one.
So, but real quick on this.
Yeah, please.
Interesting, though. Those ones, I feel like a lot of the time when Bo is making those throws to the sideline, receivers' hips are facing toward the line of scrimmage. Like they're coming back toward him or they've turned around. A lot of curls and comebacks or broken plays where you're working your way back to the quarterback. So
Could be
the
throwing
different,
it on the run, right?
definitely. So there's a little bit of a difference between those and the on stride deep balls that we've talked about, which is 10 plus on
or
the sideline.
squeezing it in the end zone or what
Exactly,
have you.
yes.
Okay, so that ended up being the same tweet. I don't know why. Then we've got this other one here. I guess they're all the same tweet. I also had another
this
one
one's
on
different.
the deep.
Talking about this one?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, catchable rate on throws that are 15 plus air yards without pressure. Simply, are they accurate downfield? Bo Nix second only to Jaden Daniels. I'm actually surprised where some of the other guys like Caleb, Drake May, and Penix of all people.
Yeah.
Penix you'd think would really be high up on this metric.
His
Not
pressure
so much.
stats aren't great, Michael Penix.
What I found is the analytics really liked Bo Nix. They really did not
Yeah.
love
No,
Michael Penix.
They really did not.
Yeah.
Like you see, I mean,
and we
when
were
I
all
was
pretty
saying I
high
like
on it.
Penix, it was every day I was getting 4 or 5 people showing me the little route tree with the
I know.
success rate on
Yeah.
each. And it's like, yeah, there is that, but also look at him. Like, look what he did. Like, watch this throw.
I'm
It's just-
right there
it's
with you,
sometimes
man.
it doesn't match what you see. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at drop rate from this last year, Marvin Harrison Jr. had a higher drop rate
Then Xavier
than
Worthy.
Xavier Worthy.
Yeah.
Which it's like, okay, but
But what?
that does not match what I'm watching.
Exactly.
And then that final one, Alyssa, for EPA.
Good old EPA.
Yeah, you want to explain EPA to us real quick?
EPA is a down-to-down metric that basically it takes in a lot of factors, but it's expected points added. So it's a lot about success rate, efficiency on a down-to-down basis, basically.
Yeah, and Nick's from his last years outperforming guys like Kaepernick, Jalen Hurts in their final years, Bridgewater, Pickett, Johnny Manziel, Lamar Jackson, Drew Lock, Geno Smith, Jordan Love. You guys see the list right there. So as far as points added there on a per play basis, he's performing at a really high historic rate in his numbers from last year. And that's on top of, I mean, I'm not going to stay here and cite all the advanced stats that Sean Payton's just spit in every interview.
Right.
Or PFF, who has him ranked as number one in a ton of categories.
Yep. And with this one, obviously exciting. Like, I don't want to say I don't agree with it or any of that stuff, but the offense is an incredible offense. Like, as much as we talk
Is
about
it though, Hank? Like,
I think so.
There's not one highly touted coach on that staff that's an offensive mind. Not one playmaker went in the top 100.
yes, but
Not one of those O linemen is outside of JPJ a highly touted prospect.
but I think again,
Like, it seems to
it's
me
apples
like it
and
was
oranges.
the 6th least talented offense of the 6 top prospects that were drafted at quarterback.
Maybe talent wise, but then you look at it and you
UNC.
say
Really? With Lincoln Riley and all those
No,
highly-
UNC.
NC.
Oh, UNC
Yeah.
this year, yes.
Yeah.
This
But
year,
I think
yes.
you watch though,
good point.
and every single play there's a guy open where he's supposed to be open. Maybe not every single play, but pretty close to it. Like you run all those concepts and they work over and over and
don't
over
need that
again.
one,
And so much of it, like, it's not the most complex thing, but when you got 3 receivers to one side and they only had 2 DBs over there, they threw the screen every time and got the 2 blockers a guy. Maybe it's not revolutionary
Are those
offense.
guys more open than USC as open wide receivers on a regular basis, the way Lincoln Riley schemes them open, or
I kind of think so. I think
more open than
And maybe that's the
Odunze
difference with the
and Polk
offensive
and all
line.
those guys were,
And I don't know that they're as open as they were making the play.
because like I don't know, Henry Ruggs and Waddle and those guys
Definitely.
when Mac Jones was thrown to them.
No,
felt more
definitely.
open
Like those are
than-
good, but I think when you watch Oregon play,
Or like CJ Stroud, the receivers he threw to at Ohio
yeah,
State.
they
They
made
were pretty
plays.
open.
But again, I wouldn't call that the offense as much as that was the players being really good. I think
Yeah, but the offense isn't bad. Ryan Day, Lincoln
No,
Riley,
no,
those
no,
are
it's
better
not-
play
it's not- no,
callers
it's
than
not bad
anyone
offense.
Bo's working
It's not
with,
bad
right?
offense, but I think that when you go and look, there is something to the fact that there was an open receiver every time. Like when you look at his completions, it's a little bit different than the Penix completions where, it's a great ball like right here over the guy's head, like the corner's back is turned and the receiver makes the play. It did feel like you're throwing the little out route and it's open. You're throwing the hitch because it's off coverage, it's open. You're throwing the screen because you got numbers over there, it's open. Like we had Brian Baldinger on the show, and what he said was in 5 years of college football, there were maybe like 50 real NFL throws. And it depends on how you define those. If you're saying like tight window, it's different than like a lot of these concepts are real NFL concepts. Like it's just good, smart offense to take what the defense gives
The
you.
difference is everyone can make those throws versus not everyone can
Yeah.
make certain throws.
And so I just wonder when you calculate that sort of stuff, yes, putting the ball in Bo Nix's hands on any given play is worth 0.2 of a point, 0.02 of the point. I can't remember what the stat was. But I also think that some of that is, hey, tight end's open for a 5-yard gain. Like, is that Bo Nix is doing that play is there, that 5-yard play is there? Or should that be split a little bit between, the coaching staff for getting a guy open or however you want to grade that?
I'm just saying, I think there's been other really efficient, high-performing offenses, and I think it's noteworthy that Bo has outperformed
Definitely.
just about any other offense in college football.
No, it's
by all
definitely
these
notable.
different metrics.
It's definitely notable. I mean, all that stuff. Like
Because what you're
he is
describing-
a 77% completion percentage. Like
Right. And there's still some missed shots. Like
There
there's
are.
still- he's
Absolutely.
He's not perfect.
but like when you watch the Broncos play football, the receivers are not getting open in the way that it is when they're playing.
For
Oregon.
sure.
And it's
But
like apples
isn't
and
that
oranges.
like a super normal transition from college to the NFL, though,
Absolutely.
what you're
Again,
describing?
It's apples and oranges. Like getting guys open in the NFL, very different than getting them open in college football. But again, if I need somebody to make a tight window throw, which I think there are more of in the NFL, like there definitely are, I'm taking Penix over Bo Nix. If it to run this the Sean Payton offense, which should be built very similarly to, to create these open looks underneath using these very, very traditional passing concepts for the most part, like take the free yards. Yeah, you want Bo Nix running that offense, but defenses are going to have better counters to that. They're going to see that, you have those 10, 12 concepts that you run, which is more than a lot of teams, but they study those and they'll be playing for those. So you aren't necessarily getting as easy of looks as I think Bo got last year.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that there might be other
But
quarterbacks
again,
who look more
I'm
equipped.
saying like that's common knowledge, right?
Definitely.
That adjustment from college to pros is always going to be like that.
Definitely.
I don't think there's anything unique to Bo's situation in Oregon in that sense.
I mean, I think that I would look at. I think that some of these other quarterbacks may be more proven with the tight window throws that you're likely to need more of. I think that would be a concern.
Because they had to throw it more often in college?
They had to throw to tight windows more often than I think Bo did. You don't think so?
No.
Huh. Okay.
I think the number of tight window throws you were asked to make from Caleb Williams, Daniels, Penix are all about the same as what Bo Nix was asked to do. And I think JJ was asked to do less on that regard. And Drake May probably was asked to do more.
Interesting. Yeah, I just feel like I saw more of them from those other guys. Penix in particular being the big comparison.
I think that's just due
But
to
is those tight window throws or those are like tight throws in tight coverage and
Yeah.
101s?
I mean,
That's not a tight window throw.
okay. Well, then tight coverage throws. Like I think there were more of those. 'Cause I think there were just
Yeah,
more
maybe.
times when the catch was contested for Penix than there were for Bo Nix. I think that makes it a little bit different.
I think Penix just had more of the gunslinger mentality, though. And I think Nix, especially if you go back in his career, I think he might have been shied away from that because of what happened at Auburn. What happened week 1 that first year he was at Oregon against Georgia, where he realized, like, I just can't throw stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the picks was, I remember it was like a trips formation at the bottom of the screen. And I think it's something like a 4 verts concept. So they're all crossing the field and the safety just cuts right under, man, and takes it all the way back. Like, you can try them for sure, but that's what happens when you try them and it doesn't work. You know what I mean? So I hear what you're saying for sure, though.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. Because that's what Drew Brees did. Drew Brees would nail tight windows all the time.
Yeah.
I just think he's living vertically and on the sideline in a different way, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
I've
think,
seen those quarterbacks translate. I've seen those quarterbacks not translate.
Definitely. But you're going to need to get more out of that if you're going to open up that stuff underneath. It's just too easy to cover a lot of what they ran when you're in the NFL.
I agree.
Yeah.
You're going to have to make some plays at quarterback in the NFL, and a lot of them are going to have to be out of system, but part of the game is playing the system to your advantage, playing the system as tightly, as confidently, and just as on schedule as possible.
Yep.
So it's a balance, really.
Yeah, it's going to really come down to not getting into those bad habits out of system.
Right. Yeah. Which is, I mean, and it's funny, I brought up that underdog video you sent us. They mentioned he's like a Sam Howell who doesn't take sacks and throw picks, but it's like, well, you turn on Auburn, that's the player he was. Like, so if that's the player we're getting, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, if there are issues with protection, if the talent is not up to par on the offense, I think we're going to see a lot more of that come out, like we did the player he was at Auburn, where, you know, at Oregon, he has one of the best offensive lines in the country, faces, you know, pressure on only 12% of throws. Like, he had a deep threat that now we have, but he was a guy that he could just like sling it down to. I think that's where a lot of the deep accuracy stats come from too. So, I mean, this is why we love this shit, though. It's fascinating.
Yep.
There's a lot of context. There's a lot of ways you can go.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just interested to see what he can build on from this last year and what his ceiling truly is. Like, how much higher is it physically? Like Dre's kind of said, I think my biggest takeaway is I have less concerns about some of the raw tools than I did early on. I think it's more about footwork than anything else. But I will say, like, I do think that some of the concerns we have, even if I feel a lot more optimistic, are still certainly valid in terms of like, if he ends up being a Brock Purdy type, that's great. We also have not yet seen Brock Purdy in an instance where everything is not perfect around him. And they took him in the 7th round, not with the 12th pick.
Yep.
So, like, the fact that they have had that type of success, it almost feels like, do you feel as good about the Purdy situation if they took him with the 12th pick, for instance, if the results you are getting?
Well, it would have been a much better pick than Trey Lance.
Well, yeah.
True.
That
And what are you doing in 2 years?
fucking mascot would be a better pick than Trey Lance. He's going to at least be on the sideline.
Exactly.
But that's what I'm saying, right? You could
But,
talk
yeah.
yourself into Trey Lance being the right pick at 3. I mean, some of this stuff kind of gets...
Well, I'm just saying, like, I think there is an argument that if even everything goes perfectly, it might not justify where they took him.
Absolutely.
Even if it goes
Yes.
as like if everything goes perfect, he can nail it. He's executing Peyton's offense. That still just might not be enough of a level to justify where they took him.
And what are you doing in 4 years? I guess you probably accept the 5th year option, but how much are you willing to pay him to come back and do that? Same thing with Brock Purdy. Like, what are you willing in 2 years to pay Brock Purdy?
You
Are you
willing to
willing
give
to
this
give
guy
him
a quarter of
$30?
$1 billion?
Are you willing to give him 40? Are you
Yeah.
willing to give him like? At some point, you got to decide that. And obviously, every penny you spend on your quarterback is money you don't spend elsewhere.
A couple things with that. One, you guys were talking about on the show today with his like projected stats and stuff. And I think it was you who said that's basically what the average Broncos quarterback stats have been
Yeah.
the last 8 years.
Yeah, no. If you look at like where the sports book has the line set, it's basically the exact same.
Right. And then the other thing, too, I've seen a lot of Derek Carr comps when it comes to Bo Nix. And that honestly scares the hell out of me because I think that's right where you don't want to be in quarterback purgatory.
But that comp makes... Like, if you watch Derek Carr at Fresno, I don't know where you're pulling that comp out of.
Right, for sure. But like, I think in terms of like NFL ceiling, though, if that's what Bo Nix's ceiling is around Derek Carr, where you're like, well, he's around 15 to 12th best quarterback in the league. Like, you're going to make the playoffs every now and then. You're going to have a good record. But when it comes down to it, tight games, playoffs, you know, what's the difference really? What are you getting that's going to push you over the edge?
To me, I think the big picture concern is that with all these other quarterbacks, it's easy to see how they become just like a superstar quarterback. Caleb Williams, if Caleb Williams,
Even Penix?
yeah, I think so.
Even JJ?
I think so. I think those two are obviously the toughest of the other five, but Caleb Williams, it's easy to see. Like he does Mahomes type
Yeah,
stuff,
Caleb
makes them
we can
plays.
move on from.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels, he does Lamar Jackson type stuff, Michael Vick type stuff. Like that when you have that speed passing combination, if that pops, there you go. If you're Drake May, you're the big body quarterback who can, third
there's
and
high
three,
upside.
you go run it. Like it's just so easy to see the path to the very top of the NFL. Penix, like I think that one-on-one, he can feed his man. And that isn't as exciting as the Mahomes thing, but I think you give him a true number one receiver and you find ways to isolate that receiver. I think you give him Justin Jefferson, you get the one-on-ones, you get like he will put the ball where it needs to be put and let his receiver go make a play. I think that I think in the mold of like a Joe Burrow sort of, if things obviously go really well, I think that arm is just so exciting. With Bo Nix, I think the path to being an elite quarterback is to be like Tom Brady. And that is just so hard to say, like, that is the path. Like, that's what we need you to do, is to be such a good processor, to be able to pick your matchup that well every single time, to see what you have out there, to work your way down the field, to potentially get a little bit better down the field like Brady did during his career with the help of Randy Moss. That is just the dream scenario.
But what about the conversation we just had for an hour has you doubting his ceiling? Because Tom Brady was a 6th rounder without the raw talent we just described from Bo.
And that's the path. That to me is the path, is to be Tom Brady.
But why don't you think he'd be someone who has more raw talent than Tom Brady? Why is Tom Brady the path?
What do you think the path is?
I think the path is anywhere from Hurts to what a better version of Bryce Young would be, to like Burrow-esque, which is another comp we've made.
Yeah.
Bigger Kyler.
I like Burrow better down the field. I like Burrow better playing the outside game. I think.
Yeah, sure.
And that's where I see Penix more likely to be good at those things. Now, Penix obviously has plenty of other things to clean up. But that is, to me, I think it's much easier to see the path to being an all-pro quarterback in those other guys than it is with Bo.
I think you're obsessing too much with the outside deep ball, which was kind of the point of this whole thing.
Yeah?
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Is he that much better? I mean, Penix reminds me a lot of, like, let's go through guys with, like, good deep ball accuracy who've been drafted in the last 10 years. Derek Carr is one. Ceiling concerns, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Jared Goff was one. Ceiling concerns. I don't know if you could say Mahomes was a high-end deep ball accuracy. I would say no. Baker, I thought, had really good deep ball accuracy. Ceiling concerns.
Yeah.
Dwayne Haskins, same thing. The elite deep ball accuracy. This draft, Burrow, I'd say probably had that, right? I don't know that. Tua
was like that for sure, right?
Yeah. Ceiling concerns.
Yeah. But I still look at those guys and I just see the path to being an elite quarterback so much more clearly than I do with Bo Nix, because you do need to be able to do that stuff at the Tom Brady level, at the Peyton Manning level.
But the advanced stats say he does it better than Penix, sorry.
Yeah, and I think but that is where he will have to live his entire career.
On the outside, making those throws?
No. I'm talking about just this underneath, pick them apart, pre-snap read, bat.
But 90. Why? Everything we just talked about says otherwise.
No. But I think down the field outside, I think you'd be crazy to like Nix better than Penix. And I know the stats don't say that, but like when I go back and look, I think.
But why is that one factor something that swings the entire quarterback ceiling conversation for you?
Because I just think that is an elite trait. I think that when you look at what Bo Nix does, you need to be able to be that sort of supercomputer mind. You need to be able to do that so elitely to be able to be that all-pro type of quarterback. Whereas these other guys have a skill already that I look at and say, that is an elite skill. That can be what carries you. You definitely need to clean up the other stuff and be good at that. But I don't think Penix needs to bat 1,000 on the underneath passes in order to be an all-pro quarterback, because he has that elite ability, that elite skill set when it comes to those outside throws that will raise his floor, or I guess maybe raise his ceiling. But with Nix, you need to be so sharp underneath. You basically need to be a supercomputer to be the type of guy, like to be that number one all-pro, not to be a very good quarterback, but to be the kind of guy who every team in the league looks at every year and says, hey, they've got Bo Nix. They're a Super Bowl contender, So, and again, like when you look at the guys who've done it before. Drew Brees has kind of done that. Peyton Manning has a lot of that, like Tom Brady. But when you start naming those names, it's very tough.
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts isn't that guy though.
Outside throws.
But I mean, like, but Jalen Hurts is
a guy who's had success without being clinical on outside throws.
He's had success, but again, I'm not talking about having success. I'm not talking about top 5. I'm talking to be the best quarterback in the NFL.
I mean, I think that's an unrealistic ceiling for everyone that's not named Caleb Williams in this class.
I think that's kind of where you got to aim, though, especially in the AFC. There's so many good quarterbacks that are already in that conversation. If you don't have a guy that's
how you end up never drafting a quarterback every single year, and you will pass on Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, they have those traits. They have the super elite traits that
Lamar
you can look
doesn't
at.
On the outside throws. He actually is the one MVP candidate that doesn't have that one trait. You're obsessing over it.
I'm not talking about outside throw. I'm saying with Penix, that's his that's his elite skill set. That's what could carry him. With Lamar Jackson, it's not he can hit the outside throw. It's he has the mobility. Like that is what can unlock him to take him to that top tier. He doesn't need to be perfect at everything else because he is so good at that.
Right.
With
I just
Bo
think
Nix,
your theory that he needs everything else to be perfect to like have success is unfounded, because he has other traits that we just went over for an hour that will allow him to overcome not having to be perfect over the middle.
to be the best quarter. What do you think, Jake?
Well, to be the best quarterback is
exactly.
fine, but like to be worthy of a franchise quarterback contract in 5 years, which is really what the discussion should be.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the
We'll
throws
see, and
off
there's
platform, the
difference.
dual threat ability, the accuracy on short to intermediate throws, the ability to throw, off platform with anticipation to avoid turnovers. I think that goes way beyond just being clinical on underneath throws.
But I don't think there's a path for him to be an all-pro unless that is his best trade.
Give me your final thoughts, boys.
I see where Hank's going. Look, Bo Nix is a very interesting, very complicated prospect. I think he's one of, if not the most pro-ready guy. But I think there's a lot of questions about his ceiling that are very valid. I think that there's going to be challenges in building this team to match his strengths to get him to where Sean Payton envisions him. So in this year, I think it's just about, can he prove that he is not that Auburn guy? I think that's what really matters to me. Can you keep up what you were doing at Oregon in terms of limiting turnovers, just making the right football play? That's what I want to see this next year.
Justin?
I'm kind of with Jay. I want to see more of what I saw in Eugene and less of what I saw at Auburn. And I'm curious to see how much trust Peyton puts in Bo early on in terms of like opening up the offense, stretching the field a little bit. Like, do they take some real shots down the field and try and open it up and try and get some of this stuff underneath for him? And I'm just interested to see how it plays out at this point. But I will say, after like the last week and watching a lot of this, I'm intrigued. I think this season got a hell of a lot more interesting in the last week.
Definitely.
No doubt about it. Interested to see how it plays out. We might have to get into more talks on Bo's traits since this hour wasn't enough for us. So thank you to Raising Cane's Breck Distillery for presenting this here podcast. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Go all silly like the mayor.